What conspiracy theories turned out to be true? Netflix throttling DVDs for frequent movie watchers. If you watched a lot of movies, your returned movies would start to take longer to be marked as returned. This would delay them sending you a new movie. They adamantly denied it for a while. Finally they fessed up to it and also said you'd be placed at the back of the line for new releases. There was that one time when the Church of Scientology infiltrated nearly every aspect of the U.S. federal government in order to destroy documents relating to the founder of Scientology and help the church avoid paying millions of dollars in taxes. The government is spying on your conversations and internet activity. In the U.S., tobacco companies spent decades bribing the media, politicians, and scientists to lie about smoking actually being healthy and recommended by doctors. I don't think anyone thought it was a conspiracy at the time, but the Hughes Glomar explorer wasn't actually mining manganese, it was raising a sunken Russian military submarine at the request of the CIA. Colombia's government and high-rank military officials killed farmers and poor people just to get personnel promoted and support from people. The bodies had uniforms just like the ones guerrilla soldiers used to wear. People started noticing that something was wrong with these guerrilla bodies when the boots in some of the bodies were backwards and a lot of people went missing from villages. I mean, I don't know if it counts, but one of my co-workers tried telling us about coronavirus back in December, insisting it was gonna be a huge deal. Unfortunately he was a really weird dude with a lot of extreme opinions, so no one believed him at the time. The government spying on you through your cell phone used to be a tinfoil hat tier conspiracy. Person of Interest was pure fiction when it first aired. Cattle being mysteriously killed and mutilated. However, it's not because of aliens, but the government trying to keep close tabs on mad cow disease without causing mass panic in the public and cattle farmers. There were whole teams of epidemiologists ninjaing across the entire US killing cows and taking tissues in the dead of night so they could test herds without the farmers refusing them access or there potentially being another wave of panic about the disease. There was a rumor surrounding a bad Atari 2600 game. The game E.T. the Extraterrestrial was so bad that it is credited as a cause of the early 80s game crash. The conspiracy was that all the unsold copies of the game were buried in a New Mexico landfill as a method of mass disposal. This was discovered to be true in the early 2010s. Everyone thought Carrington was a crank when he theorized that a solar storm had caused the extreme aurora borealis events in 1859. Decades later, scientists discovered Carrington was spot on. Rich people hiding billions in offshore accounts was a conspiracy. Then the Panama Papers happened. The sinking of the Lusitania. The Germans justified sinking it due to it being used for military transport while the British claimed it was merely a civilian vessel only. Since the Germans attacked a civilian vessel that included Americans, it caused the US to join the war against them. Looking back, it was quite a jerk move to allow American, and others of course, civilians unknowingly board a vessel being used for military operations during a war without telling them. I wonder what the American public would have thought about that at the time if they knew the British were not being completely truthful. I am not a historian, so if I'm missing or skewing any details, please jump in here. Want there the DuPont incident where they poisoned the water supply? Also that town where they set fire to garbage they hid in a minute and created a mine fire that's still burning. They denied it for about a decade, also the inspiration for Silent Hill. Merck really did hide post-licensure surveillance data from the FDA which clearly showed that their billion-dollar blockbuster drug Vioxx was killing users left and right. Estimated 150,000 heart attacks were caused by the drug with around 60,000 deaths. Interestingly, Merck was testing Gardasil, the HPV vaccine, at the very same time it was knowingly killing people and intentionally keeping regulators in the dark about it. Kinda makes you think, doesn't it? that a lot of the North Korean pilots in Magali were actually Soviet, Russian, and that the Soviets, Russians actually had soldiers in Vietnam. Also how Whittaker Chambers was exactly what he was accused of being. So before Snowden, everybody knew that it was possible to monitor the telecommunications of an individual. But no one believed that everybody would be under surveillance. US agencies spying on everyone was a conspiracy theory. After Snowden we know that in fact, it is true. COINTELPRO. Civil rights activists and such at the time suspected something was up, and suspected it was the FBI, but were treated as absolute fucking nutters until it all came out. I remember watching the season 2 premiere of Preacher when I learned about the theory of how they used circumcised foreskins as an ingredient in some facial creams. I was even more surprised, and somewhat grossed out when I found out it was true. Apple intentionally make phones worse with each update, causing you to want to buy a new phone. This was proven and they got sued for it. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. COINTELPRO. The FBI's program of spying on and infiltrating civil rights organizations. They assassinated leaders, planted agitators to provoke violence, and generally worked to undermine and hamstring them however they could. It was only found out after a group of white activists broke into an FBI office and stole the files. The USA harboring high-profile Nazis after the war. I don't think many people realize how difficult it is for a government or literally any organization to keep a secret for years, let alone decades. Some of these conspiracies had actual hard evidence to demonstrate their validity. Politics is a giant conspiracy, where outrage is manufactured and events are coerced to play out at the cost of the public in order to generate votes for the party. The CIA did actually experiment with mind control, specifically with LSD. The program is called MKUltra. The US government's technology is 65 years ahead of the end consumer. Man, it's just unbelievable how many times the US government has lied to and fucked over its own citizens. There was a conspiracy theory that AJ Styles' jokes about Earth being flat weren't really jokes. It was confirmed by Randy Orton that AJ actually believes that the Earth is flat. Light bulbs don't burn out. There's actually a documentary on it. One of the first light bulbs ever made is still on and has never been turned off. Because our society is based on consumerism, the light bulb industry couldn't exist if they made light bulbs last forever, so they purposefully designed them to burn out after a number of hours. Operation Gladio. Basically like the Division. A group of undercover stay-behind agents was created post-World War II to act an emergency response force already integrated into communities that can quickly rise up and fend off invasions while civilians get out of the area. It didn't really go exactly as planned and ended up being uncontrollable and involved with a number of assassinations and terrorist acts. Pretty obvious one, but MKUltra, that shit sounds crazy but actually happened. The CIA started selling crack in the black community to pay for a war against poor communist farmers in South America. Iraq invasion was to destabilize region rather than help it. The Chinese invading and capturing Scarborough Shoal kinda low-key no war and bossing say if you ask me. The CIA did indeed import cocaine into the United States and sell it into poor black communities, such as in Los Angeles. The money was then used to fund anti-communist fascist groups in South America. They did the same with heroin from Asia, after taking the trade over from the French. Maxine Waters pointed this out years ago. Rush Limbaugh insulted her about it for years and had never apologized, because he is a racist boss. The Holocaust. I remember my late grandmother telling me that when she was a teenager during World War II there were rumors going around about what the Nazis were rounding up Jewish people to take them to prison camps and experimenting on them. She said that many people, herself included, dismissed it as a conspiracy theory as they didn't think anyone could be that evil. Russia interfering in the 2016 election. Honestly, I thought it was just more xenophobic nonsense to create another foreign scapegoat for us Americans to collectively hate. Birds are robots controlled by the government to spy on us. Rosie O'Donnell being gay. Holy fuck, I remember seeing it on the same tabloids as Bigfoot and Ricky Lake having a baby in the mid-90s. Didn't care then. Turns out it was true. Still didn't care. Just thought it was funny about the Ricky Lake, Bigfoot baby. Ronald Reagan interfered in the Iran negotiations in order to sabotage hostage negotiations and win an election. That the whole food pyramid isn't actually based off science in the US, it's based off of which companies pay them the most. Meat and dairy companies being the highest of which, even though dairy specifically is shown to be bad for your health, along with meat. It's like the whole tobacco being good for your health thing. And please, I don't want to have an argument about this. Just go do some research. Remember when Alex Jones was talking about the pedophile ring and then a couple of months later Epstein's case was revealed to the public? Epstein running a sex cult on his private island. All the birds actually are robots. That Apple were purposely slowing down older iPhones with new iOS updates to encourage people to buy a newer model. Turns out it was true. Not proved, but I've been watching some shows about how Hitler didn't die and went to Argentina. I'm still taking it with a grain of salt, but they make a pretty compelling case. My husband is acting like I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, watching how they faked the moon landing documentary. In Operation Mockingbird, it was described the CIA would use the media to start calling truth speakers conspiracy theorists to shame them into silence. The Illuminati is real, created by Adam Weishaupt, and society calls them a few other things such as deep state or cabal. That's all I'll say about that. When in World of Tanks Blitz I went off on my own hoping the enemy team wasn't traveling in a group, but my theories were true and they got the jump on me and I was the first to die. Most of the ones involving the CIA, definitely MKUltra at the very least. That there were actually microchips in the clones that the Emperor was going to use to execute Order 66. America knew about the Pearl Harbor attack and let it happen to gain nationwide support to enter the war. Here is my rather mild conspiracy theory. The loo roll panic was engineered to push panic buying from really essential stuff like PPE and food. After all, it's easy to wash your ass if you need to, not so easy to find an alternative if it's food. Thank you for watching.